Thank everybody for coming out. Today, and this is going to be starting from here on out, Waywell, we residents of this building will be taking every second Wednesday of every month the 5 o'clock session. And so our main goal for this really is to bring out entrepreneurs and business owners, freelance artists that are in the area, ones that we worked with in the past, or people that just come off in terms of recommendations for people to speak out to. And so really to empower what you guys got going on. One of the main missions that we have as Waywell, and reason why we actually work out of Keystone, is to be able to do that, right? Create a place for people to be empowered, create a place for people to be able to promote what they got going on. And so when we were actually kind of dialing in on terms of who we want to bring out, you guys definitely came to mind. I do like the diversity at the stage in terms of the panelists that we have here, and so that's exactly what's very, very intentional. And so that's exactly what we'll be speaking about today. So the fact that we have two freelance artists and then two business owners right here on the stage was very, very intentional, and I can't wait for the rest of this conversation to go on. One of my first questions, just to dive a little bit deeper into you guys, is kind of take me into where you started and like where you are today, and where you started and kind of how that got you there. I'll actually started with Deontay.
Okay, as far as where I started, business-wise, I started about 4 years ago, 2019, with my clothing brand. From being a kid in high school, my father raised me and 4 siblings, so like having new clothes wasn't really something that we were able to get often. So especially me not being the oldest or the biggest, it's like my new clothes was new to me, right? So it's like, one day I'm gonna own my own clothing brand and be able to have my own clothing brand, and kids in the hallways will have my clothing brand. And that's something that I wanted since then, and just life happened, and it was something that was on the back burner, and I was like, I don't know how I'll be able to make this happen, because I didn't have connections or a network or ideas on how to get funding, and everything that I knew about starting a clothing brand with the access to the information that I had was I need thousands of dollars to get bulk things to be able to have this brand and make it happen. And just technology and time, now you have things like print on demand, which is super accessible, and it can allow you to not only start, but to be able to expand something with little to no cost. Like you can actually make your designs and showcase them on social media and get attention and get people to buy them before you actually have to produce anything. So that is what really got me into being an entrepreneur and a business owner from there. And from there, I've always loved art. And I was like, the biggest thing that I've always wanted to do was be an artist, but again, just lack of resources and connections. Like the only people that I've seen become able to take care of themselves or their family from artwork, either they're dead and their artwork sells for a lot post-mortem, or they have networks in like California or New York, and they have these like big gallery connections, and those galleries are taking huge portions of it. But that's still like, you're selling this painting for $10,000 because you got this, and you may be getting 30% of that. That's still $3,000 from a piece of artwork. And I'm like, that's nice. I'm trying to see what that's like. But like, as far as for me, is like the few people that I knew that were artists, like they're selling prints of their artwork, and their artwork looks good, and it's like $10. I'm like, you're doing that, and you're telling me that it took you 40 hours to make this, and you're selling these prints for $10, and at this event you sold 5 of them, and this was been here for like 3 hours.
Was this when you were still doing t-shirts at the time?
Yeah. Okay. So I was like, this doesn't make sense to me. And with that, I started seeing a few people on social media. Big inspiration is this guy named Ozzy the Virus. He does like anime pieces, and I was like, that's more of my style. And he seems to be able to take care of his family. He has a daughter, and he was engaged at the time. And I'm like, I'm married, and I have, at the time that I was looking at this, 3 kids. And I'm like, that's like he's showing me that this can actually happen with me doing my artwork. So I kind of got in touch with him and then a few other people around that same circle. I was like, you know what? This is something that is actually possible. And I just kind of plugged in and made that happen. And I've been a full-time artist now for about a year and a half.
Yeah. Wow, that's all. And he has some really amazing art. We'll definitely talk about, where we can find you a little bit later. But Ivan, how about yourself?
So I'm in the business of inspiring individuals to reach their potential, expose them to opportunities and resources that they might not be aware of. I say that my journey to where I am now has been kind of personal. Growing up, I wasn't really exposed to, I would say that I never really had a role model necessarily, and I wasn't really exposed to things like even knowing things about how to apply for scholarships. It was just things that I didn't know. Like, I applied for one university, they accepted me, and I was like, well, shoot, I'm out of there. And then when I got there, I just did everything I could to not go home. And so as I started to learn things and figure things out, and see that, while I was gaining this knowledge, a lot of my peers were already exposed to some of these things prior to being where we were, whether that had been in college or in my first professional role. They were a little bit more prepared when they got there. And so that just inspired me that as I was achieving these things and learning to do things, I wanted to reach back and be able to expose young individuals like myself who didn't know and just had to figure it out through trial and error, expose it to them a lot earlier, because if they were able to take advantage of those things earlier, they elevate a lot faster and probably get exposed to things that even I didn't have the opportunity to. So it's kind of like the Sankofa effect. You always reach back with what you have.
Yeah.
What
was your first step there? Like, what was your first step into getting into where you are now?
Well, I would say that what's crazy enough is that, like I told you, I got accepted to one university, right? And so when I got there, again, I learned that being involved and getting engaged with things was what really kept you in university. They always say it's about who you know. So I joined student organizations and sat on executive boards and even did my internship with the university and just really built relationships with the professionals that were around me outside of the peers that I had while I was an undergraduate. And that experience and being intentional about being involved on campus actually led me to get a position at Colorado State University. So I only have my undergraduate degree, and usually working in higher education, people usually have their master's degrees, if not their doctorate. But the role that I went for was the development and retention specialist. And because I have been on so many executive board, literally helping facilitate programs that help retain individuals that look like me, which was their goal at Colorado State University. Even though it was just me with my undergraduate and interviewed 5 other people who had a master's and doctorate, I was the one who was offered a position because I had actually done the work and had a direct connection to the work that they were trying to achieve at Colorado State. Yeah. So I was able to be real impactful within my first couple of years because I was, again, like working with students that were just like me. Like, they were probably the first person in their family to go to school, probably like felt out of place because it is a PWI, a D1 PWI at that. So, you really just feel like just a pebble in the Grand Canyon or something like that. And just, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to repeat your question because I'm.
No, I was just you were doing perfect. I was just asking how did you start and how did it get you to where you are today?
Yep. So it definitely started at the university, and then I got that grand opportunity to go to Colorado State University, and just from there, doors just continued to open because, again, I got to serve as development and retention specialist, and that being my first professional role out of college was really intense. Like, my relationship with my supervisor when I first got to the university was a little rocky because she saw all my potential, but I didn't really have like the professionalism or the background in higher education. But by the time I left, I definitely proved I was definitely the person for the job. But it was like boot camp because at the time I was like, dang, this is what it's like getting your first career job, and then I go on to take other positions, and I feel like, infinite because, my job may be, like this little portion, but I'm like, man, everybody's job was my job when I worked with Miss Bridget, Yeah. So that job really prepared me for all things. And then I came back to Kansas City. That was out for college. I came back to Kansas City during quarantine. And as I was trying to get my grounding, I started attending community events and job fairs. And that's how I ended up being a job developer at Connections to Success, because the HR person was having a job fair. I forget which community center they were at, but we were just having a casual conversation. And even without my permission, they went back and they talked to the director at Connections to Success and let them know that they met me in the conversation that we had. And then like a week later, the director reached out to me and said that they were hiring for a life coach and thought that I'd be great for the position and wanted me to interview for it. And so I've been able to serve Connections to Success for the last 2 years, and now going into the job development and education specialist role, which again still ties back to being able to pull those resources from around the city and get the clients and the parents that I work with. Since I've been there, we've had about 7 parents go on to be certified phlebotomists. We've had 2 people finish IT certifications. And the people that we work with, we try to work with everyone, but a large portion of who we are working with at the moment are people who are experienced certain levels of poverty. You know, like maybe they might be experiencing houselessness, or returning citizens who are trying to figure things out. But just what we've been able to help people achieve since I've been there has been phenomenal. Just even 4 weeks ago, we had a person who was living at the Veterans Association. He did our personal professional development course. And about a week after completing the class, he received a job offer for $120,000. And they flew him out to Wyoming. And he just went from being houseless and living at the veterans home, and now he's moving to Wyoming on a 6-figure salary and getting reconnected with his children, and just more than getting his life back on track.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Appreciate what you do, for sure. Jamogi, how about yourself?
So for me, I always kind of knew what I wanted to do ever since I was like young. I want to say like around 4 or 5, I pretty much knew. I knew that I always wanted to do music, and specifically it was singing. I mean, from the time that I was just like singing in the house, I would sing so much that my mom would tell me like, can you shut up? Like she would ask me, can you be quiet? Because, you know, I would sing late at night sometimes, or even in the car, I'm singing. And my family noticed that I love to sing when it was one time during church. And I'm from Long Beach, California, by the way. That's where a lot of my family still remains. And I was singing in church. And then after that, we had our Christmas play come up. And I was selected to do the role of like the first angel. So one of my songs was Hark the Herald. And what I remember my grandma telling me was like, oh, by the time when you opened your mouth to sing, everybody's mouth just drops. They're like, that boy can sing. And I was like, really? I don't remember all of that happening, but if you're saying that's what happened, then I guess that's what happened. And exactly. And so ever since then, I've just been singing some more. And I went into band. I played the euphonium horn, and that's when I was diving more into music, and more so of like learning how to read music, how to understand music on a deeper level. And I've done that since 6th grade, and that's when my band teacher was kind of like, oh, you have like a real gift for this music thing. And I was kind of confident about it. It's like, yeah, I kind of do, huh? And, you know, I was just really sure of myself because I knew, again, this is what I wanted to do. And I put in so much work into it. So when you put in so much work into something that you know that you love, then like, of course you have to like kind of boost yourself up. And once middle school came around, I was getting tired of classical music. And I spoke to my band teacher at the time, and he was a jazz pianist. And I told him, I want to start like a jazz band or something, or some kind of other band, because I'm tired of like all this other stuff. The overtures, they're cool, love them, great. But I want something else, especially after school. And so we talked about it. I told him like what my plan and what my vision was. He told me the things that he's like, okay, you have all this stuff that you want to do, but here's what we actually can do. And so we discussed all of that, and we started the jazz band. I started off on bass guitar, and then more people started joining. So I then went on to piano, then drums, then back to the baritone horn. And then at one point I was kind of like, can I just sing? Because like I can sing, like in case you didn't know. And he was like, yeah, sure. So we started singing some covers, and after a while we were kind of like, okay, like can we sing something else? Like it's kind of boring singing songs that are already out. And he tells us like, why don't you all write your own music then? And we're like, okay, cool. So it was about a group of 5. We were all inside like the office, and we had like the paper in the middle. Everyone was surrounding the paper. It was like we're doing some kind of sacrifice or something. Like the lights were off, and we're just kind of like, okay, like what can we do? What do we say? And so we were just kind of like throwing stuff at the wall, and I was like, wait, I think I have something. So I just freestyled a whole song, And after that, we were like, oh my gosh, like this is the one, this is the one. And I was like, okay, cool. What did I say? And we didn't record it. We didn't do any of that. So now we're just like, oh shoot, now we gotta like go back from the top. So started writing in middle school. In high school, I went to this high school called Artesia High School. And again, it was just band. There wasn't anything else singing wise. And so a group of friends and I, we started our own choir. And we would meet during lunch, which was tough because lunch is only 30 minutes. And half the time, you're in the lunch line. And when you have like over 500 kids in that lunch line, you don't have a lot of time to rehearse. So we then moved it to after school. And we laid down the groundwork of like, okay, this is what the choir is like. These are the expectations, and these are the things that we need to do. And I told everybody, like, if there are some things that you cannot follow, like you need to let me know ahead of time rather than day of. And I gave expectations, like, if you're gonna miss out on a performance, you have to let me know beforehand. We had a whole system. And then after that, in January 2015, we moved to Kansas City. And I was like, dang, like, I left California. And I was looking up things about Kansas City too. I was kind of like, I was looking online and someone said there was some kind of beach. And I was just kind of like, oh shoot, there's a beach. I'm gonna be good. And then I got here and I'm like, there is no beach here.
There is
I
one,
was like,
Longview Beach.
Oh shoot, we'll see.
It's a lake.
I was just kind of like, dang, like there's nothing here for me. And so I remember telling all my friends about it. I was like, y'all, like, I'm just gonna run away from home. I'm gonna take the Greyhound and gonna go all the way back. And they were just kind of like, yeah, like we'll house you, we'll do all this other stuff. But obviously I didn't do it. But I was seeking other avenues because I was just at home a lot of the time. And so I found this program called the Upper Room Jazz Program. And I was like, oh, I kind of already been in something like this. I told them that I played the euphonium. I was in there and I met this one parent, and she's like, oh, my son and my daughter sing in this community choir called the Kansas City Boys Choir, Kansas City Girls Choir. Like, you should come out and come to a performance. I was like, okay, cool. Went to a performance, loved it. I immediately went over to the rehearsals the following day, and I told the director, like, I would love to be in here. Because it wasn't like your typical choir where you're just kind of singing out of a book. They did everything from singing to dancing, all this other stuff. And I was like, yeah, this is like definitely what I want to do. I auditioned, I got in, and then later on in the year, I became, they call it Mr. KCBC, which is like the head choir boy. And with the choir, we've been able to like travel throughout the Midwest. We've also been able to sing with like artists like Shaka Khan and also Patty Austin as well. And then in high school, we were able to sing at what was called the Sprint Center at the time. And that was with Eric Church when he came over. And so there's just been so many things that have happened. And after I attended UMKC, majored in music education so that way I can understand music some more. And I eventually became the music director of the community choir that I graduated from. And I'm still doing that. And I started my whole music production side during COVID. I saw this video of this artist, Chloe Bailey. She was producing. And I was like, well, if she can do that, I can do that too. Like, it shouldn't be that hard. So I went to the student union. I bought my first MacBook and I charged it to my student account. And I was like, I'm determined for this. This is what I'm gonna do. I got it. I bought Logic as well. I spent like a good week or so looking up stuff about Logic and learning about the program. After that, I started making music by myself. I produced my first EP. It is called Age of Aquarius. It's on all platforms. And that's probably something that we can discuss later on as well.
Yeah.
But ever since then, I've just been helping out with either doing vocal layering and also singing. And I also networked online as well through Twitter and also Instagram. So I also work with other artists who are in Missouri. So from Tennessee, some in Philadelphia, some in New Jersey. And sometimes people will be like, if you, can you send background vocal work? And then I'll do that. I'll lay out some background vocal stuff and I'll send it on through. And yeah, and ever since then, I've just been doing music. So that's pretty much my journey of how I got where I started from and how I got here.
It's an amazing journey for sure. Can't wait to get a little bit deeper into it in just a second. Right. How about for you, Brandon?
Yeah, if you know me, I made my product in high school, but I mean, nothing happened there. Went to high school, went to college, flunked out of college, came back home and just kind of looked around and said, I didn't really have anything to my name. And so when I started developing flavor and what it was, I've always had a real sense of community. So I knew I wanted it to be more than a drink. And I knew I wanted to I wanted to be intentional about everything. So my artwork is done by my best friend and one of the best artists I know, Andre Nelson. Like all our flyers, I specifically choose local artists. Like everything I do is intentional to the point where it slowed me down at some points, but I think it's important. And so, I mean, my journey is just about intentionality, just making sure that we're always, sticking to our brand and our mission. And, no matter how slow it's going to take, that we do it right. Because if you start right, then you don't have to get right. Yeah. And that's easy for us.
And so even for you, Brandon, because I'm about to hit on something right now, but even for yourself, in terms of like an entrepreneurial mindset, like what was like one of your earliest memories of that? Or did it just come after you just decided one day I'm just going to open up Flavor?
Man, I'll credit two people. I'll credit my dad first. He owned a ton of businesses. And even before I knew he owned businesses, he owned them. So like I remember being a kid and yeah, that was weird. Sorry. He owned We Demand cleaning business, like WED. It's crazy. But I used to sit in these buildings and he used to just clean these offices and I was just there. And like, I have very faint memories of those, but like, I think it starts there. And I think seeing his pride in his ownership and just doing that. And the second person is my marketing teacher, Miss Nelson. I took 3 years of marketing, which is like insane. People take one class, get it done, off. But 3 years of it, I made her my homeroom teacher and I made her like my special tutor teacher. Like I was intentionally making sure I was around her so I could just soak up the knowledge and just like learning all the little things about marketing from her, learning about business, having to make business plans. It was just invaluable. So I don't know. It was just around me and I just kind of picked it up.
Yeah. So it's very interesting that I think, so for me, as you guys are going through your answers, I was thinking in my head, I was like, so the first two, Deontay and Ivan, you guys kind of came up where there was just a lack of support, right? And then when we went over to Jamogi and Brandon, I mean, you had your father, and then you had the church actually. So you had the church, and that kind of just started you very, very early on. So our similarity for myself is kind of like, this starts very young in a sense, right? And so Ivan is currently working at that. He is helping the students and helping younger generation or older generation to kind of get up on their feet. But I guess what I'm trying to ask here is, what kind of support systems groups in Kansas City, or do you think there's a lacking of support in terms to like get people ready for what you guys are currently doing right now? Ivan's ready.
Okay, so I don't really know where this is going to go. I don't think that there is a lack of support, but there's barriers in some areas. It all comes down to exposure as well, right? A lot of people just don't know what's available to them in the city. They don't know that they can go to everybody now, so give me they don't know they can go to Kansas City Scholars and they'll pay for them to further their education in 4 different fields, whether that be construction, IT work, healthcare. They don't know that they can go to the Full Employment Council and they'll pay for them to get certifications, or that they'll pay for them to become those phlebotomists and those IT technicians. They don't know that those resources are available to them is really what it comes down to. And the responsibility of them being aware of those resources falls on a number of people. In a nonprofit world, it's pretty it can get a little muddy because everybody's working out of grants, right? And so everybody has to get their grants fulfilled. So sometimes working with individuals is kind of like, for lack of a better term, like real estate. Everybody's kind of got to meet their grants. They want you to go through their program, right? Mm-hmm. But if you're like compassionate and empathetic, like I don't care where you get help. Yeah. Like just go get it, But I mean, again, that just kind of becomes just a very muddy area because, of course, you want your organization to thrive as well. But the intention is for people to thrive. So sometimes it can be, just, I don't know, like hoarding individuals sometimes. Yeah. And then also like, I think that other businesses and companies and places of leadership need to become aware of things like Waywo and Connections to Success and Journey to New Life and Reconciliation Services.
Keystone.
Keystone. Places that give you vital things. Like, it's some people that are missing out on opportunities because they don't have proper documentation. Like they don't have a social security, birth certificate, or ID. But there's places that'll pay for that and get that for you. There's also people that aren't able to go and get opportunities because they like.
Just for the recording, will you repeat that last part?
Yeah, so I don't remember what I said, but some people miss out on opportunity just because they like basic things like documentation, whether it be their birth certificate or ID. And sometimes they're like, they don't have the money to pay for those things, but there's like 4 or 5 different places in Kansas City that will pay for it for them. They can go to the library, reconciliation services, Journey to New Life. Boom, now you got all the documentation to be properly employed or to start a business. They don't know it's things like Waywo or KC Biz Care that'll help people like launch their ideas when they have those great ideas like Brandon. Yeah, I think that people just need to be like more exposed, and like I said, that responsibility falls on a lot of people. People in leadership positions. I don't want to call out any specific person in leadership position, but there are leadership roles everywhere. So leadership positions need to become aware of the things that we're trying to provide to our community, and give us a platform and some resources so that we're able to help everybody.
Yeah.
I think for me personally, being like a startup, it was really frustrating seeing like grants and things go out and then be like, this startup won. And then you look at that startup, they're like, yeah, we've been in business 15 years with a brick and mortar store. It's like, are you a startup? Like, what's a cutoff for a startup? And so it just always felt like a little fish. And people just use that word startup as like kind of a trigger word. So I think it's like, we need more help for actual startups, like people who are kind of in that idea phase. And I think even people who can't prove their concept, like those are just very gray areas that I feel like are looked over. So I think personally, as somebody who took like 4 or 5 years to find funding, like it was just like being a real startup competing against brick and mortar, 10-year startups, quote unquote.
Deontay, what do you think?
I think I'm going to agree that it's a matter of exposure. Like I remember when I was in college, I went to UMKC. I remember there were like events that would happen like for job fairs or things like that. But it was like on campus, which I mean, it's understandable. It's run by the campus, but to have something like that in the communities for where those organizations are trying to serve those communities where they can know about them, like would be really helpful. Like I didn't know about any of the stuff like until I was on that campus, and then I'm walking from one class to another and I come by and I'm like, oh, what's this table for? Like, oh, that's what y'all, how long have you been? Y'all been here for 15 years. Like I grew up here in Kansas City, like 2 blocks this way and 3 blocks that way from where y'all are, had no idea what y'all do. And I would love to have started a business and y'all help find grants or whatever the case may be. Like I had no idea that this was here because they never came into the community where I was at. So I think exposure is a huge thing. And kind of what we're hitting on today, another thing would be like collaboration. I know that with trying to start things like with my clothing brand, a lot of times I would reach out to other people who have clothing brands, and unfortunately like the response was not very collaborative or helpful, almost as if like a majority of them have this very scarce mentality of I can't help you because you're a competition if I help you, instead of having a more abundant mentality.
So it's like siloed out in a sense,
Right.
like kind of just feeling very competitive.
Right.
They
So
don't
it's
want to
like,
help.
I don't know the resources. Somebody who has some resources, and I'm like, okay, where are you getting these things from? Because I see that everywhere I'm looking, they telling me I need 500 shirts, but here you are with 100 shirts. Like your MOQ is less than everything that I'm finding. How are you getting that? Like 100, I might be able to do, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know what that number is, but 500, I definitely can't do, right?
Yeah.
So just having more collaborative mindsets from those who are in a position to be more helpful, and then exposure for the organizations that are actually in communities to help those individuals or companies or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, no, 100%. How about yourself, Jamogi? Do you think in terms of just support in general, getting you to where you are today, do you think there was a lack of, or do you think do you agree with everyone else in terms of exposure and collaboration helps in that sense?
That's a really good question. I would say, so for me, where I found support, I actively went out to find it because I first again, I think in order to get that support, you need to know what you want to do first, because a lot of people, they'll just kind of they'll have an idea of what they would like to do, but then after that, later on, they're like, never mind, that was just a phase. I don't really want to do that. So I think when you actually pinpoint, okay, this is what I want to do, this is exactly what I'm needing and stuff like that, then you have to go out there into that field, and then you can start asking. Because for me, I'm an asker. I'm not really scared to ask. I'll just kind of go hey, how do you do that? And after that, sometimes I'll come back and I'll either help out as well. One, so that way you can see my face some more, but also that I can learn and see what you're doing, and I can take note mentally and be okay. And then I'll also ask hey, do you happen to have this, or do you happen to do this? And just building that relationship. I mean, when I first started out, my first mentor, he was the choir director. But what I didn't know beforehand was that he also used to be this gospel artist, and then he also had these connections to all these other people in Kansas City. So I first started out by after school, I'd go out to the choir office, I'd help out, I'd organize the music, I would also do some data entry. And then he was kind of oh, I'm going to this board meeting, do you want to come? I was yeah, I can come. I went over there, and there's all these other people in the arts. And that's when I started learning about all the other organizations that Kansas City has. And I was I did not know anything about this. And so just being there and then asking questions as well, and participating, I've been able to find people who have the tools that I was needing. And then after that, now I also branch out as well. So now that, especially through social media, which is one of the greatest tools, I've been able to kind of go out there and I'll DM someone and be hey, how exactly did you do this? Or are you willing to help out in this aspect and all this other stuff? And I've gotten a lot of good responses. Yeah. But yeah.
Oh, perfect. All right. And then, I mean, you guys touched on a collaboration, so I think this is a perfect little pivotal moment right here, or to pivot, and that's the way. Starting with Brandon, I do think, collaboration and exposure, being out there on the field, something we always say at Waywell or in general is just, a lot of people want to be a part of the community, but they're not in the community, right? And so, I mean, and it's tough though, because then it's almost like a double-edged sword, right? It's whose fault is it? To Ivan's point, is it the leader's fault, or to Jamogi's part, the only reason you found support was because you went out there, right? And so they both bear fruit, but it's an interesting little debate with, you can understand both sides, right? But I would love to get into collaboration piece, and in general, what is a collaborative relationship that you had that really influenced your business and your endeavors for the better? Yeah,
I'm starting.
Yeah. So basically, what is an example of a collaboration that you had in the past that really took your business off, or that really got you to where you are today?
Gotcha. I don't think that there was I'm sorry.
No, you got it.
No worries. So I don't think that there's a specific collaboration that was really the aha moment, but the experience of being at Colorado State and working with over 400 to 500 students, because I specifically work with African American students. I really learned how important it was to collaborate, and that was a really important life lesson for me, especially like I said earlier, a lot of things that I tried to figure out was kind of on my own. So, we all got an ego and pride, right? And so I'm always I can do it myself and I can figure it out because I can. But what I learned while being at Colorado State University was just how ass backward that was. That if I want you to be exposed to IT, for instance, I could sit down at a computer and watch YouTube videos and Google with you and look up some job applications and redo your resume, and we can still do those things. But if I actually know someone who works in IT, why not put an event together with them where they can share their experience and talk about the world of IT and how they got started and what individuals' next steps can be. That's far more than we can figure out some things together, but just in a casual conversation with them, because that's their field, you're going to get far more from that. And I'm going to save a lot of time and energy. So Just really understanding that, I rely on knowing somebody, right? I always tell somebody, like, I say I know everything. It's like, I don't know everything, because if I do know everything, because if I don't know, I know somebody who knows, and that's good enough. And so I just think that, like, I heard a quote one time that it said, like, people can get so caught up in themselves that they rather put their name in, get 100% out of the bare minimum than get like 3 to 10% of the entire world. Like, if you just collaborate and share your platform and share some of the workload with other individuals, like 3% of $1 million, or you want 100% of $300, like, just collaborate.
Yeah, 100%. Deontay?
I would say, for me, it would be the guy that I mentioned before from Instagram, Ozzy. So I did he does some original characters. And while I was doing my clothing design, he wanted me to create a windbreaker that matched his original character to actually sell as a physical thing. And with having that collaboration, I was able to kind of inquire into his world on the art side of things. And that really is what got me started and had me really thinking, like, this is a path that I could take. Like, that was one of the first and original paths, like, that I wanted to do. But like I said, I was like,
yeah, you didn't see a way there.
I have a family to take care of, and the art can't do that. And it was like, to see that he's doing that with art, it was like, okay, like, we can actually have a conversation because we are connecting because of this collaboration, versus with like previous things, how I mentioned, like, if I reached out to another clothing brand, it's like, hey, I saw that you have this thing going on with this other company. Like, how do you get like collabs like that? Versus where do you get your hoodies made, versus any of these other things where it's like, well, you know, I've been doing this for 4 or 5 years, and then nobody helped me with that. So, you know, keep looking and find your own thing. Like, I'm getting like roadblocked on these. Like, it's very open, which was like a very key thing to me being able to actually go into art, like just art, and versus doing my clothing brand solo. So,
yeah. How about for you, Brandon? You already have the mic?
I'm ready. My biggest collaborations came this year. First would be with Kansas City Gift. They were truly amazing. I stumbled upon them on dumb luck, but they're right on 50th and Prospect. And like, their biggest thing is just like being a resource. They have free office space you can book for an hour at a time, free, like, you know, photo studio, free business classes, coaching. It was just everything. And so when I stumbled upon them, obviously the grant money is what really accelerated us, but just like the spirit, the love, the family, that kind of, and that's what you get from collaboration. Like, you work with somebody and that's nice, but those relationships that turn into much more is just crazy. And which leads me to the second one, obviously Waywell, which was crazy. Just stumbling upon them. They actually were meeting Andre, and I just happened to be standing next to Andre. And so it's like, all right, well, you can come to Waywell too, I guess. Yeah, sure. And so I show up one Wednesday, and I never missed a Wednesday after that. Like, it was just the air and the spirit of work, and that like, I love you, so why aren't you doing better? Like, I needed that. And so it's just been amazing. Oh, don't do that. But yeah, so just being around those collaborations and letting those grow into bigger relationships, it's just amazing.
One of my favorite collaboration experiences was with the AI Hub, actually, and
Shout
how we
out.
met. Yeah, shout out to the AI Hub. Really, the AI Hub is like, they gave me a lot of resources, and that's probably why I'm like even further along my journey than where I first started.
We may have met you through the AI Hub.
Exactly. Yeah. I remember going to the first Waywell Wednesday event. And
That's how
so
I
we
got here,
first
too.
found each other I found AI Hub when my car was at the shop and I had 3 hours. I walked over to River Market, and they were having like this open mic event. And I was like, yeah, let me go up there and pass some time. So I was singing, and, you know, I did my thing. And then after that, I saw Taylor come up to me, and she was like, oh my gosh, like, we love your voice. You know, you're really good. You know, we're the AI Hub. Are you ever interested?
That's a good impersonation.
Shout out Taylor, man.
watching this.
I hope she watches this.
And I was like, yeah. So I left my email, and then she was telling me about like that they had this open house thing that they were trying to do. I was like, yeah, I can go. I have plenty of time. Walked over there. They told me about everything that they had. And I was like, this is what I need. Like, this is right here. This has to be a sign. You know, like, sometimes whenever you meet those people, it's just kind of like the light bulb goes off and you're like, this is where I am supposed to be. This is what was supposed to happen. So went over there. And after that, I was like, I want them to see my face and I want them to know who I am. So I went to their events, followed them on social media, commented on their stuff because, you know, everyone has their social media things and comments. I didn't comment like excessively. It's just every time they had a post, I liked it. I commented and, you know, gave it its praises. And then I went over there every now and then. And then I joined their street team. And with that, I've been able to like help them with ideas. And one thing about whenever I collaborate with people, I try to be a sponge because I don't know everything and I don't want to know everything. Because if I did, I wouldn't be here. Yeah, if I knew everything, I would not be here. I would be somewhere else far along making all this money, but that's not the case. And so I try, you know, I listen, we all listen to ideas. And after that, we'll be like, okay, so I like to find out ways on how we can make everyone's idea count and how we can make it all work together. So we'll be like, okay, like, so what if we did this while implementing this and then, you know, put it all there and it's like, oh, okay, cool. And like every time we collaborate on stuff, whether it be what apparel we should do or what kind of events should happen, it's always great. The only time we ever had like a disagreement was when we were trying to come up with hats and what it should say. And everyone had their own thing. And we literally had like, it was like court trying to be like, this is my idea and this is why I think that the hat should say this and all this other stuff. And so after like 45 or 50 minutes of like going back and forth of what it should be, we're like, well, why don't we just like make a hat for each one, you know, and that also let the people vote. Because at the end of the day, it's the people that are wearing this. We're going to wear it every now and then, but it's the people who will decide on if this is what they want. Yeah. And then at the end of the day, like, you got to put your pride and your ego aside. If they don't pick your stuff, then they just don't do that. There's going to be like more ideas. So it's just one out of many they can come up with. But that was one of my most favorite collaborative experiences. And big thank you to the AI Hub.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely a great plug for them. I mean, they've done so much for us. I mean, 2 of the panelists on this stage, I think we've met through the AI Hub, which is actually pretty good. So with that being said, though, I mean, like, and this may be a weird question as I was thinking about it, but just going to go for it. I don't know what's going to come from it, actually. But how can we, in terms of like, I mean, we've mentioned some struggles in terms of like collaboration, in terms of silo and, you know, people not being specifically exposed to certain opportunities. So like just for some insight really and market research for something we're doing, how can we be better? Like how can we be better at collaborating, and whether we're talking about brick and mortars, freelance artists, to the people down the street, like how can we be better? What are some of your ideas there?
I would say, and I know we all have families to feed, I get it, but when looking for collaboration, especially with people local in your city, like not everything is about a check. It just isn't. Like, things are for the betterment of the city, for the betterment of your business, their business, whatever, but not everything is about a check. And if you're gonna do business, do good business. It's been a lot of bad business in Kansas City, but neither here or there. It's just about like understanding, swallowing your pride, not charging people excessive amounts, like just work with people. And like people seeing you work with other people is gonna want them to work with you. It's gonna inspire people. Like just let it happen. Not everything is about a check.
So just going off what he was saying as well, like people seeing you collaborate and the success that you see with other people, like what did Drake say? Like everybody wants to be a part of something. So so when they see that, you know, they know that you're someone worth collaborating with, that they can trust that partnership. And I think that one way that we can help have an impact on collaboration is just being open and sharing the spaces that we already have. Like as we're trying to break into other areas and bring other people in, we all have connections and platforms just up here on stage, you know. Like Waywell invited us all into their space. At Connection to Success, they do the personal professional development class. And so that's 60 hours. That's 2 weeks where they have to be inside of my office space from 9 to 3. And I'm working on inviting community community members in, regardless of what you do, if you feel like it would be beneficial to expose the classroom to those things, inviting them in to share a session throughout their 2-week curriculum. So the next opportunity, they have an orientation for the next class this Friday, and then starting on Monday, we'll have 2 weeks worth of curriculum. And at any time, if anyone's in the room that they like to come and share what they do for the community or what they can do for other individuals, opening that space to you all.
Yeah.
Great plug.
Yeah. Anyone else? Deontay or Jamogi?
I think one of the things that we can do just as individuals is if you don't have it, just opening up your mind, having that mindset of having a more abundant mentality. Like if you believe and understand like there's enough for everybody to eat, then you are more open to collaborate. You're more open to sharing the information that others might hold as sacred or the secret sauce, because you can see that, like, especially in certain spaces of, if there is more attention brought to this space, whether it's directly on me or not, like that's more attention brought to that space. And if you're in it, then that, in some way or another, you get that as well. Mm-hmm. So just having that mindset or that mentality that there's enough for everybody, that right there can be a game changer to where if you're sitting with a group of people, whether you know them or not, and there's questions being asked, or whether you're the person that's wanting to ask the questions, like you're okay with or confident enough to speak up about, like how he was speaking, like I'm an asker, right? So like being confident enough to be an asker because you have this mentality of, I am okay with giving information as well as receiving information, because I know that like what's meant for me is for me. So I think that is a key thing that can help with collaboration.
Yeah.
I don't want to say too much, but I want to just make sure that we touch on exactly what you all are just saying, like being an asker. Like definitely, like there are people out there that I know, like sometimes you ask people and they don't give you the information you want, and sometimes you ask people and apparently you get all the information you need, right? But the thing is, like the law averages, if everything can't go right, that means everything can't go wrong. So if everybody's telling you, if you feel like everybody's telling you no, like all it takes is one person to say yes, they give you the information that you need. So don't get discouraged, as you're reaching out to people and you find people who would, rather be stuck in their silos. They're not the only ones with that information. Just keep on seeking that information. Somebody's out there got it. Somebody probably gave it to someone who can't wait to give it to you. So just continue to be an asker and be okay with people, not sharing because, somebody out there does.
All right. Last thing from Jamogi.
I would also say, I won't echo a lot of what they said because I agree with a lot of it. I would add, you also have to be slightly knowledgeable about the people you're collaborating with, because, you can't just go up to anybody and be like, oh my gosh, let's collaborate. And then that you don't know what they do or anything, what their mission is, what their values are. Because if your values aren't in line, and you're going to have some issues down the road. So I kind of treat it as if, like, for example, if you were to pitch a song to, like, let's say a Spotify playlist, right? On Spotify, if you type in at gmail.com, you have all these playlists that pop up. And there's like thousands of people who are submitting their songs to a playlist. The ones to make it stand out is you have to listen to the playlist at least a little bit, and find out what it is that you have that can also help add to the playlist, or what do you have in common. So for example, I'll like send an email, be like, hey, I'll say who I am, what I do, the product that I have. I'll compliment what they have as well. Like, I really love your playlist. I notice how, and I'll point out specific details as well. So that way it's like, oh, you actually paid attention as to like what I have out here. Because people put in a lot of work into what they do, and they want people to like, to get that feedback and that appreciation. So I'll do that. I'll be like, I love that you have this here. I have this, and I feel like it would go great because, and I'll give a reason why. And then after that, I'll also thank them for their time and everything. So I'll just treat all my relationships and all my collaborative stuff like that. I'll reach out and be like, hey, I would really love if we work together because I feel like we have some things that go in line. For example, boom, 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 list it out. And then after that, I'll wait for an answer. If the answer is no, that is okay, because there's always somebody else who wants to collaborate. There's always people, and my mentor has always told me that too. There's people who want to give money Just because the first person said no doesn't mean that everyone else in the city won't. You just got to go out and you got to actively search because someone is hoping that they're asked.
Yeah. That's perfectly perfect. I mean, that was greatly said. Lost of words. But with that being said, let's just close it out with this speed round. What's something that these people here can do to support you guys and what you guys got going on? And I'll start with Brandon.
I'm simple. I'll take an Instagram follow at Flavor FLAVR BEVCO. Like I said, we're trying to save the world through powdered drink mix, all natural, no sugar. We started a community garden as well, so if you want to come out and water something, or I don't really know what I'm doing, I got to be honest. It's my first time ever planting anything, but it looks nice. So, I mean, just the Instagram follow, stay active with us, you know, and we'll support you as much as we can.
Yeah. You
you can just do an Instagram follow as well. That is just JAMOGI.bridges. Again, JAMOGI.bridges. And really, if you ever see me out in public, you can always say hi. I'm always going to be like, hey, sing it. JAMOGI.bridges.
There you go.
And
Voice
yeah.
of a god.
Thank you. But yeah, just a simple follow. And after that, if you ever see me out in public, just feel free to say hi. I'm always happy to just meet people.
Ivan, how about yourself? Speed round.
Invite me to collaborate with you. I'm always I'm always down for that. Like I said earlier, I work at Connections to Success. We have 2 offices, one on 300 West Linwood Boulevard, one on 1017 North 6th Street. Would love to be able to incorporate some workshops or some community resources into the curriculum for the individuals who complete our personal and professional development, or at least start taking a class. So if you're down to come in and talk to some people, no matter what you do, if you feel like it's valuable, let me know. I'd love to get you in there.
And Deontay?
A few things.
things.
Me and my family, we left the country last year, and I only started doing my art full time last year. So being back in Kansas City, a big thing that I want to do is network and collaborate. So with that, like if you know of any opportunities or organizations, like definitely like connect with me and plug me in and let me know. Follow me on IG and engage. Like definitely want to do that. It's howard.d.artist. That's HOWARD.d.artist. So you can follow me on there. I am doing a 100-day art challenge right now. So as those come out, like, share, comment, put it in your story. And then of course I'm gonna ask, like, shop with me, buy something, right?
Yeah.
So
all right. Well, appreciate you guys for coming on the panel. This was an amazing panel speaking about collaboration and how we can do better here in Kansas City. Give a round of applause for these guys for sure. All right.